Hey everybody, welcome back to We Are Podcast Network. This is Meep, Season 1, Episode 2, Halloween and Halloween versus Halloween. If this is your first time checking out the podcast, thank you so much. Please go to your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, or iTunes, and give We Are Podcast a like. And if you get a chance, head over to our social media. All links can be found in the description. We're at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at /We Are Podcast. With that said, on to the podcast. Hi everybody, welcome to Meep, My Effed Existence podcast. This is Duck. Thank you so much for listening. The Meep podcast is just going to be myself talking to you today about Halloween. It is Halloween right now. I'm just chilling here in my apartment. I got a nice little jack-o'-lantern shirt on. I'm enjoying a little bit of the Jim Beam that is left over from the We Are Era podcast. Please check that out also on the Quack Attack 5000 network. And I just watched Halloween 2018 again. So I kind of want to talk about Halloween and what it means to me and my history with the holiday. So when I was younger, I was never allowed to celebrate Halloween. My mother was a pretty staunch Christian, nothing wrong with that. And for her, everything that Halloween exemplified, especially the occult side of it, she was very, very against, which is fine. I was never intrigued by Halloween as a young child. I honestly was terrified of it. And I had convinced myself that I got sick every Halloween. I probably did. Nerves, anxiety, stress. But as I got older and I started to enjoy the different terrifying things in life, I really started to be envious of other people who enjoyed Halloween and got to celebrate it. So when I was a kid, we didn't even get to go to school on the day of Halloween. That's how intense my mother's Christian point of view on this was. We would get to stay home that day, so hey, not a big deal. Sometimes we get to have the candy that the kids brought in, so that's cool. Just never got to dress up, never got to take part in those things. I remember being younger and seeing Halloween stuff and thinking, oh, it's just so evil. I want nothing to do with that. I was a pretty staunch Christian myself as a kid. And when the churches and stuff like that would have the kids dress up and go get the candy, we weren't allowed to dress up for that either. I think maybe once or twice my mother kind of waned on letting my older brothers dress up, but I was pretty adamant that I wasn't going to do it because that's just, it was evil and it was wrong. I would say closer to my teenage years, I was a very scared child. Everything terrified me. Anything that was even slightly occultic, demonic, monsterish terrified the crap out of me. The only thing I remember really enjoying when I was younger was the Universal monsters. I really liked those. And in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a push for the Universal monsters, I believe, to sell candy during Halloween. But my distrust of monsters and things that go bump in the night were also kind of enforced by my older brother, Mike. He's a wonderful person and he's crazy and I love him. But he enjoyed terrifying things like the monsters and Stephen King, and he was very much into horror movies and things like that. The closest thing I came to anything that was scary was we loved Godzilla. And when I say we, I mean my brother Mike, me, and my brother Matt. And everything Godzilla, that was in play. Godzilla was the shit when I was younger. And we used to go to our local library, and we were able to rent Godzilla movies. Now, we only had a couple choices. We mainly watched Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and Godzilla vs. Megalon over and over and over. Especially the one where it has the guy with the saw in his chest who has the weird reaper hands and the beak face. One of my favorites of all time. Godzilla is the shit. To the point where we go, we'll make the noise. I make the noise. I love the noise. You gotta do the noise. So, when we were younger, our school library had two things that really stuck with me my entire life. The first was the Marvel Comics collection, where it had #1 issues of the Fantastic Four, the Incredible Hulk, Thor, which I could give two shits about, and Iron Man, which, once again, didn't really care about back then. Of course, you gotta love Spider-Man. So I would find myself reading over and over Fantastic Four and Spider-Man, and sometimes I'd skim over the Incredible Hulk. I was intrigued by him. And they had this series of books, the purple and orange and black front, because all of it was from the classic horror movies, Crestwood House books. Recently, I reread a PDF file online of the Godzilla Crestwood House book we used to read when we were kids. It was actually really good. It really held up, and for me, when I was younger, yeah, it seemed like a big read, but they're very simple books. They're made for kids, lots of pictures, but it goes into the details of Godzilla. And like I said, Godzilla was the only monster that I had any interaction with as a child. I was terrified of everything, to the point where one time I went to the library and they were watching Child's Play 3 there. And I couldn't understand why they were letting people watch Child's Play at the library. That was terrifying to me. I had to sneak around that. When I was a kid, the end scene in Who Framed Roger Rabbit was one of the most terrifying things, where Christopher Lloyd's character turns into a cartoon and he starts talking in a high-pitched helium voice. I can watch that now and laugh my ass off. I think it's great, but as a child, it scared the crap out of me. I had to hide behind a couch. I have a very vivid memory of hiding behind this couch and crying and begging for them to turn the VHS tape off so I could leave the room, and no one would. I also had the same reaction with Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, which now, once again, is a guilty pleasure movie. I really love that. Originally titled Bill and Ted Go to Hell. And that's what happens in the movie. But what really got me is their robotic doppelganger versions of Bill and Ted, when they would take off their face and their robotic skeletons would shake around a little bit. Looks very cheesy now, but it's a very effective effect. And it terrified me as a kid. Once again, was hiding behind some furniture that time. Another movie that scared me when I was a kid was Hocus Pocus. I remember my dad started watching that movie and I cried because I didn't want him to watch it. Yeah, Duck was a little bitch back in the day. It's alright to be a little bitch sometimes. I grew up a little bit, still a little bitch about some things, but take this drink, I should be okay. But these Crestwood books, they didn't just do Godzilla. They had King Kong, they had Frankenstein, they had Dracula, they had the Mummy, the Wolfman. So anything that was kind of a universal monster, they had that book about them. And I would check out the Dracula and Frankenstein one quite a bit more, but Dracula kind of freaked me out. And when my brother was in 4th or 5th grade, my mom actually wrote a letter to the school saying, please stop letting him read this book. He thinks he's a vampire. He's scaring his little brother, or something along those lines, because he probably was. He was very good at it. Looking back at it now, it's funny. When I was a kid, it was terrifying. So, kind of stayed away from Halloween stuff until I became a teenager. My first big interaction with anything that was kind of creepy like that would be when I first played Resident Evil 2 at my cousin's house. We'd rented it at a game store, and I played it on the PS1. And I had nightmares for weeks about that game. And the nightmares were so intense, they eventually turned into a fascination. And because it scared me, I was more and more intrigued by it. And eventually, I had to have that game. And I had to beat that game, so I had to play that game every day, and it was no longer terrifying to me. I mean, the concept of a zombie, when I was a teenager, was still pretty scary. It wasn't really up until the point that I watched the original Night of the Living Dead that I got over my fear of the zombie. And the first time I watched Night of the Living Dead, I watched it in rapt awe. I was just blown away by the atmosphere, the black and white, the fact that it takes place in Pennsylvania and it was only about an hour and a half away from where I was born and raised that the movie was filmed, really played into my enjoyment of it. And of course, seeing the backwoods where the zombies were wandering around into a decrepit house, that really hit home because I lived in the backwoods around decrepit houses. So I could relate 100% with what was going on with that movie. So that helped me get over the fear. And the one big thing that got me into this, I would say into liking Halloween or enjoying it, would be The Nightmare Before Christmas. When we were younger, because we weren't allowed to watch Halloween-related stuff, the movie was demonized. Well, my mother told me it was evil. Eventually, I got a copy of The Nightmare Before Christmas from a friend who let me borrow it. I watched it, fell in love with it. I had the same nostalgic feeling towards Nightmare Before Christmas as most people do who saw it on the original 1993 release of it. I didn't see it until I was probably 12 or 13, but it played into my little emo goth side, and I love it, to the point where on my keys I have a Jack Skellington keychain. I'm a fan. The fun aspect of The Night Before Christmas, where it took all this Maccabee stuff and made it interesting and fun and lighthearted, probably played into how I view Halloween now. I used to view it as something very evil. Now I realize it's just fun. I know that there's a lot of history behind Halloween where you could view it as very evil, but I see the commercialization of it, and it's just a fun holiday. I didn't go trick-or-treating my first time until I was 23 years old. I went with my friend Agent, who at the time had never been trick-or-treating either, and I think he was closer to 30 at the time. And we just went out. I don't even know what I wore, maybe a cape and some face paint, and he wore a monkey mask and played a guitar with one string, and we went door to door, and we just trick-or-treated like it was nothing. To the point where some shitty mothers were passing us, and they were like, trick-or-treating's for kids. And I was like, bitch, I never went trick-or-treating. I was probably really high, too, now that I think about it. But not as high as the first door we went up to trick-or-treating. We knocked on the door, the guy came to the front, opened it, and goes, Can I help you? And you could just see the smoke billowing out the doorway. And we're like, yeah, trick-or-treat. He's like, what? We're like, trick-or-treat, dude, your light's on. You got candy? He's like, whoa, what, bruh? Nah, man, no, I didn't know it was Halloween, bruh. We're like, sorry. Later on that night, I ended up having my first hangout with who became my girlfriend at the time. Or we ended up going to this house party that we crashed, which was great because she did a keg stand. There was a guy in a penguin suit. I remember that very vividly because I thought it was hilarious. We both couldn't stop laughing at him because we were so drunk. And then we went back to the place I was living at the time and built a time machine out of the oven. It was a great night. Used to have a lot of fun with this girl. She was awesome. So, my first Halloween experience was great. Like I said, I got to hang out with my friend. I got to go trick-or-treating, got some candy, got to go to a house party, and got to hang out for the first time with my who-would-be girlfriend for about 3 years. It's, for me, a very awesome time of the year. It's the beginning of the holiday season for me. It goes Halloween, Turksgiving, Christmas, which should be called Super Halloween, because I think we should just go door to door with our Halloween costumes and get some presents. Makes sense to me. And then New Year's. And then I cap that off with my birthday, which is January 14th. So the next 3 months just keeps rolling. I think this is my first holiday in years I haven't been at work at night or I haven't been out trick-or-treating. But sitting at home by myself, recording this podcast. So that's a brief history of Halloween with myself. And I do think it's one of the funnest holidays of the year. I think that a lot of the candy stuff where people are saying there's razor blades, or this year they're saying there's meth in the candy. Come on, that's not happening. No one's trying to hurt children in that way, unless it's a family member, which was the razor blade thing, which wasn't even what happened. That was false. It was pixie sticks that a man gave his kids. He gave them cyanide, and it was the father who did it. And they only went trick-or-treating on one street, and it's a very sad, tragic thing. But that starts the urban legend of it happening every year. I hope that doesn't happen. I don't think that many people are sick fucks out there in the world. I think most people just want to enjoy the holiday, give the kids some sweets, let them get hyper, jump around on the furniture for a couple hours, playing hot lava or whatever kids do, and have a good time. So, I want to talk today about the Halloween movies. I did a lot of research on these movies, and I kind of want to talk about my beginning with them and really my appreciation, especially of the original Halloween. I think it is a masterpiece of a film. The first time I saw Halloween, along with Night of the Living Dead, I was probably my mid-teen years, maybe 15, 16, or 17. And Walmart used to have this bargain bin where you could go pick up a couple movies for a couple bucks, maybe $3, $5. And when I say movies, I mean a VHS tape. And I would get some scary movies once in a while, and I would just keep them in the wrapping. Because there's a thing I like to do, is I like to wait till it's the right time to watch a movie. There's only so many good movies in this world. There's a lot of movies, a lot of crap movies, but there's only so many movies that people universally praise. For me, Night of the Living Dead, that was a movie that I wanted to wait on, so kept it in the wrapping. And back when I used to have a milk crate, I kept my movies and DVDs in. The other one was Halloween. I bought that, and I probably had that sitting in the crate for 6 months or so, maybe a year, before I decided to finally crack that open and give it a watch. And I'd probably seen Halloween H2O, which came out around 1998. That sounds about right. I would have been 13 at the time, so I'd probably seen it or seen screenshots or a video or behind the movie or whatever. Like on Stars, they had different shows. And so I knew kind of the idea of what Halloween was, but I'd never watched the original. So when I finally did decide to watch it, I thought it was a great movie. I can appreciate it more now because I watched it recently, but I always remember it having a very somber tone and having a lot of that music, that ambience, that stress. It looked like an older movie to me, but it always felt like it was still valid in what it was doing, and that it was a terrifying movie, and I understood that it was a good movie. In the 90s, there was a lot of slasher films that came, so I had seen so many poor imitations of Halloween at that point that for me it wasn't new. So watching it recently, I could see it with those refreshed eyes and kind of enjoy it for what it brought to the table. I want to talk about the history of the movie. It was financed by a Middle Eastern financing company, and they basically saw what John Carpenter had done with his second movie, Assault on Precinct 13, and decided that they were going to go with him and make a low-budget slasher film, or a low-budget horror movie at the time, because back then, all they were concerned about getting into was the double feature for the drive-in movie theaters, the make-out spots for kids that they could drive in and just, the movie was on, but they were getting hot and heavy in the car. And so they just wanted to make something that they could distribute out to that. They didn't think they were going to make this amazing film that was going to create this franchise. They were just trying to get a movie out there. And they went to John Carpenter and they said, we have this idea for a movie called The Babysitter Murders. So he said, okay, well, he took it. And he started writing it. And he was writing it with his girlfriend at the time, Deborah Hill, who was also his writing partner and eventual producer on Halloween. And as they were writing this, they were coming up with the ideas. The person who was the producer decided that, well, we should set this movie around Halloween and use that as a theme. And of course they did. And that kicks off everything and changes. If you look at it, you don't really need the setting of Halloween, but in a sense you kind of do, because even though Michael Myers is a shadow, the boogeyman, the shape that stalks in the night, not a lot of people see him. I think maybe one group of kids see him that survive the movie. But at the same time, he could have blended in during Halloween night by wearing that mask. Not even 2 years ago, I went trick-or-treating, and there was a guy who was following my group who was wearing a mask, and every time I looked around, he was standing there in a very Michael Myers stance. Didn't even see him coming, and I just laughed it off. But at the back of my head, I was like, man, that is kind of creepy. So while the story doesn't necessarily need Halloween to work, it does at the same time lean heavily on it. So it primarily focuses on Michael Myers, who as a young boy kills his older sister, Judith Myers, in their home on Halloween night. The beginning scene of the movie is about 5 minutes long, and it's literally just Michael going from across the street into his house, but creeping through the window and seeing his sister at the time with her boyfriend. They go upstairs. They supposedly get it on, but Michael creeps through the hallway. The boyfriend leaves after he's like, oh, I got my rocks off. Then Michael goes up the stairs, grabs a little clown mask, because he is wearing a clown outfit. Evidently he left his mask upstairs. Goes into his sister's room, kills her, goes downstairs, and his parents roll up and find him holding the knife, and he's in a catatonic state. The first 5 minutes of that movie was filmed in a single shot, and it is epic. Watching it now, I'm still blown away by how they pulled it off, knowing what they had to do. They had to go in, move things around, move the lighting rigs. It was a team effort of like 20 people to get that single shot, but it works, and it's so cinematic, and it really sets the stage for what the rest of the movie does. There's a tension to the cat-like movement of the camera through the house. It's quiet, it's creepy, but he's definitely stalking, and he's a predator. That kind of sets up what happens. We cut to 15 years later. It's a rainy night. Dr. Sam Loomis, played by Donald Pleasance, a person who was known for Western movies at the time, and the biggest actor in the movie, is outside of the institution speaking about how Michael Myers is unreachable. He is a killer. There's nothing they can do. He is in the car with a nurse. When they pull up to the institution, they find Michael Myers in a gown, and he has escaped. So this sets off the chase. He decides that Myers is most likely going back to Haddonfield, Illinois, where the movie is set, a fictional town based on the real town in New Jersey where Deborah Hill was born and raised. Hey everyone, it's just Duck jumping in here real quick to say thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you're enjoying it, please head over to your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, iTunes, and give We Are Podcast a like. And if you get a chance, head over to our social media. All links can be found in the description. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at /We Are Podcast. And if you're enjoying the podcast today, please share with your friends. It's the only way we can grow this network. With that said, back to the podcast. Now, Donald Pleasance was paid an additional $25,000 to be in this movie. The total budget for Halloween was only $300,000. So when you look at the movie and you see all the production value into it, you see how well it's put together, it's shocking to me that they put that film together for that little of a budget. And once you get into how much it ended up making, which was $80 million, that's insane. The return on that is insane. And it kicks off the franchise, the Halloween franchise, which now features 11 movies. Now, when Carpenter was writing the movie, he was dating Deborah Hill, the producer at the time. But during this period of time, he ended up falling in love with another person, and by the time they were making the movie, they had broken up. I think they were still living together, according to what I've read, so that had to have been a really awkward situation. But Deborah Hill was very much responsible for Halloween working. Not to take anything away from John Carpenter, but the script, she wrote the majority of the babysitter, Laurie Strode, and her friends' dialogue. And then John Carpenter was writing the dialogue for Sam Loomis. So when you look at the movie, it's very much an influence of both of them. Dr. Sam Loomis ends up chasing Michael back to Haddonfield, Illinois. Sadly, it just happened to happen that the babysitters that were to be murdered got recognized by Michael Myers and eventually were stalked and killed. And the movie sets it up pretty brilliantly. I don't think there's a rhyme or a reason to why he decides to kill them. There is a scene at the beginning of the movie where Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, who ended up being a huge star in her own right, this being her first starring role in a film, she drops a key off at the Myers' old house. It's a dilapidated, rundown house, hasn't been touched in 15 years. And he sees them, and sometimes I wonder if that's why he decided to focus on her, because she's the first person that he's seen in 15 years, other than the person he kills to take his clothes, we find out later. But maybe because it's the first girl he's seen in 15 years, that's why he decides to fixate on her and chase her down. I'm not really sure. The movie goes on, and it's a pressure cooker of a film. Michael is hiding in the shadows. They call him the Shape. He really is the boogeyman in the sense that the way they film the movie, there's these large areas outside in daytime with leaves blowing across the way. And I want to talk about the leaves real quick. They filmed the movie in Southern California in the middle of summer. So what they did was they had 3 bags of maple leaves they had painted different colors, and during the shots they would throw them out on the yard, and after the shots were taken, they yelled cut, they would get everyone together, even the cast, to pick up the leaves and put them back in the bag. It was probably one of their most expensive props they had in the film, and they had to conserve them to keep the illusion of fall in the Northeast. Which is even funnier to me because, as I talked about on the We Are Air podcast, Robert Englund, who plays Freddy in the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, he was actually one of the people on the crew that ended up picking up the leaves. He just recently let that information out. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. He's a bit of a storyteller, but it's kind of cool to think that Freddy might have been working on a Michael Myers movie, seeing as we'll probably never get Michael versus Jason versus Freddy, which would be a great movie. They did try to disguise the fact that they were in Southern California. There are still some palm trees and some shots in the movie, so they didn't do a great job. But once again, the idea of these big open spaces where Michael could be hiding anywhere, and it really works because your eye is kind of dodging around the movie trying to find out what's going on as the teenagers are talking about boys and their job and what's going on, and calling Lori a prude because she can't get with a boy, she's never going to have a chance, and the other 2 girls are kind of whorish, and it's pretty great. I'm not going to lie. I enjoy the heck out of this movie. Like I said, though, the best part about the movie is the tension that it builds up over time. Michael really does take his time as the predator in the film, the Shape, the boogeyman, stalking the babysitters, and then killing them. And in the film, there isn't a lot of gore. Yes, there is violence. Yes, it is brutal. But the only blood that you really see is whenever Michael, towards the end of the movie, chasing down Laurie Strode, is he scrapes the side of her arm when he's trying to kill her. That's it. Everything else is bloodless. It's brutal, but it's bloodless. So eventually, as the movie progresses, Laurie Strode is babysitting that night. Her friends end up getting killed. She gets chased for the ending of the movie. The kids escape. She's still in the house with Michael Myers. He's stalking her. Eventually, they lead to a scene in a bedroom where she hides in a closet. And Michael comes through with his knife, rips through the closet door. She pokes him with a coat hanger. Sam Loomis ends up showing up. He shoots him. He falls out of the window, lands on the ground outside. Loomis goes over to the window, looks down, and Michael Myers is gone. And he has a look on his face of, I knew he wouldn't be there. And it ends with that famous line of Laurie Strode saying, the boogeyman was real. It's a great movie. I definitely suggest you check it out. It's simplistic. It's to the point. It's the tension that it built. And I wanted to watch it back to back with the new Halloween that they just brought up, because the new Halloween is a direct sequel to the original Halloween. Disregards Halloween 2, which was the direct sequel to the first Halloween movie, literally takes place in the same night. It was written by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, directed by somebody else, and they do the inverse of what the original Halloween did, because there's a 7-year period between that and when they made Halloween 2. And so many slasher films inspired by the original Halloween and its success had come out, and they just upped the gore factor over and over again. They weren't a big fan of the fact that the second movie had many gory scenes in it. But at the same time, that's what people wanted. That's what was going to sell. It is a franchise. They need to do that. The third film in the series of Halloween, Carpenter always envisioned Halloween as an anthology series. And so it doesn't have anything to do with Michael Myers at all. In fact, it goes back to the pagan traditions of Halloween. And it really is a different story involving these masks that kill children. It's a very weird movie, but it's definitely worth a watch. Then you get into Halloween 4, 5, and 6. And this is known as the Thorn Trilogy because it follows no longer Laurie Strode, but her daughter, Jamie. And eventually Tommy, the boy from the first movie who she was babysitting, grown up and played by Paul Rudd. It's kind of a mixed bag. 4 and 5 are pretty good. 6 is a bit of a mess. There's 2 different versions of the movie that you can get. The actual theatrical cut and one that is called the producer's cut. It has some more extreme stuff in there than the theatrical cut. Then we get Halloween H2O, which is Halloween 20 years later. Made in 1998 at the boom of the Scream renaissance of slasher films. Very meta, very much dealing with the aspect of, we've seen everything, give us a little bit new, but it is also very in line with those 90s slasher films. This is the first time Jamie Lee Curtis returns. It keeps the canon of Laurie Strode being the baby sister of Michael Myers that was introduced in Halloween 2. She survives at the end of the movie. She kills Michael Myers, but there was something in the contract saying that Michael could never die. So Jamie Lee Curtis ends up showing up at the beginning of Halloween Resurrection, which is a movie that took a completely different route. Being at the beginning of the World Wide Web and the Blair Witch phenomenon, it uses a little bit of found footage, a little bit of webcams. But Laurie Strode is only in the beginning of the movie. She is the precursor to the title screen, where she is locked up in a psychiatric ward, and Michael Myers comes to get her on Halloween night, and she does not end up winning. She ends up dying. And then it's shown that Michael, at that point, has succeeded in what he wanted to do, killing his baby sister. So it's implied that he gives his mask to another inmate, and that is the person who commits the murders in the rest of the movie. It's a bizarre film, and it pretty much grounded the franchise. Later, we get the reboot remake, Halloween, with Rob Zombie, so Rob Zombie's Halloween. It's a different take on it. It's a white trash take, so if you want that, woohoo! Boy howdy. Not a fan. Originally saw the director's cut version of it first because I had a screener of it. It's a much better version of the movie than what we got theatrically. I really like it. The ending is not as brutal. It's much more in line with the original Halloween, with the shooting Michael and him falling out the window and disappearing. Whereas the version we end up getting much later is brutal, blood-soaked. Laurie shoots him in the head. Have no idea how it got a sequel, but it did. Halloween 2 is an interesting one, as it's much more like a Rob Zombie movie than the first Halloween, so I think it's kind of worth a look. So now we're getting Halloween 2018, and it's a huge success. And I've watched it twice now, and I have certain feelings on it. I don't think it's great, but I think it's pretty good. My first reaction on it was, meh. But I watched the first one, and then Halloween 2018 back to back. I think that was a big mistake, because the first movie is very focused. Like I said, it builds the stress. It's a pressure cooker of a movie. It's succinct. It's to the point. Halloween 2018 is a very unfocused movie. There are so many characters. There's so much going on. But now that I watched it the second time, and I know what to expect, I can kind of trim out the fat in my brain. And I do appreciate the fact that they gave the side characters a little bit of life before they took their life. So, watching it again, I can say a couple things that I really enjoyed about it. First, Michael Myers is brutal as shit. He is back. He has been waiting 40 years because this is a direct sequel to the first movie, disregarding the second and H2O and everything else in between. This is a direct sequel to the first movie, so you only have Halloween, and then you have Halloween. So in this version of the movie, Laurie Strode has been waiting for 40 years for Michael Myers' return. They do reference the fact that she was his little sister. They say that was just a rumor that somebody made up. And then she's just waiting. He's the boogeyman. She saw him. She thought he was dead. He disappeared. She knew he was coming back. And it has taken a toll on her life. The character of Laurie Strode is completely different, as anyone is, within 5 to 10, 40 years later. She's no longer going to be a victim. She has prepared herself her entire life for this night. And Michael has been locked up in an institution for 40 years. He doesn't speak. He chooses not to, they say. Spoilers for everything to come here. Sam Loomis has passed away, but his final decision was that Michael was unhelpable and that he should be put to death. It was the only cure for what he had, and it did not happen. The current doctor, Dr. Wily, because he looks like the villain from Mega Man, I don't think he wants that. And so the movie begins with a couple of podcasters going to get some information. Now, I found that intriguing because a lot of journalism is done through podcasting now, and that is how we imbibe a lot of that. Especially now that, the distrust of the mainstream news. So Laurie has been preparing herself for the return of Michael Myers. And Michael Myers is brutal as shit in this movie. The two key elements that you need for this movie, Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, works because you see, just like Michael Myers, very little of them. And there's a lot of characters interacting between them. And I think that is definitely a benefit to this film. There's no arc for either of them. They both have, from the outset, what they want to do, and they both get to meet up at the end. So everything else is a lot of filler for the movie. I do think the Michael Myers here is terrifying. I think that he is a killing machine. He kills without any rhyme or reason. I really debated whether or not he even wanted to go after Laurie Strode. I think the circumstances of the night, some caused by some other people in the movie, leads him to her. I don't think he was setting off to find her. He didn't return to Haddonfield, so maybe he was. But at the same time, I'm not really sure, because he goes on a nice little killing spree before that. And along with the first movie, one of the things that they do great is they do that 5-minute single shot scene. And I watched it again today, and I do think that it is done in a great way. Not only does it pay homage in many ways to the opening scene of the original Halloween, it takes it to the next level. And if you think about how much work went into that single shot, it's unbelievable. Now, there are 2 places where I'm pretty sure there were cuts. When Michael enters the house and kills the woman with the hammer, he enters the room, so there's a moment there where they could have done a cut. And then whenever he leaves that house and goes into the other home where the woman is on the phone, I think before he goes around the back of it and she leaves the room, that's another cut. But it works, and it works well, so you can barely see it. Even in the original movie, there was a cut there. Whenever Michael picks up the mask, they moved over to another edit there. So, what's really cool about that scene in the movie is when Michael kills the woman with the hammer, he walks through another room and you hear a baby crying. And he walks past the crib, and he had picked up a knife in the other room, and it's kind of hanging down towards the crib. And they did something previously when Michael Myers escapes. And how he escapes is he's being transferred from the institution to a jail. And the bus crashes. And they do that scene by having a father and his son show up. And they see that the bus has crashed. The father gets out to help. The son gets out. He's looking around. And then the little boy ends up getting killed in the car. He tries to start the car and leave. That's how Michael gets the car, but he kills the kid. So because they show that, when he's passing the crib, you're thinking, oh shit, this motherfucker doesn't care. He can take out babies if he wants. Luckily, he doesn't. So I think everything with Michael works. From the slow kills at the beginning to the more intense kills at the end, where he literally turns a cop into a jack-o'-lantern. Really, really shows his brutality. The aftermath of it. This creature is a force of nature, and he's going to destroy everything in his wake. I don't think that the granddaughter character works, and the one thing that really annoys me is she calls her grandmother. Who calls their grandma grandmother? I have never experienced that in my life. No one I've ever met has been, I gotta go to grandmother's house, and they actually look at her and go, oh, hi grandmother. That's freaking creepy and weird to me. I don't know why. You call her grandma. Laurie Strode, it's pointed out earlier in the movie that she's been married twice. And they didn't work, and eventually her daughter Karen had been taken away from her. Daughter Karen is played by Judy Greer. But she was taken away from her by the state because she had raised her in this weird captivity where she was trying to teach her to be prepared for the day that Michael Myers returned. And her daughter resents her for it. The granddaughter does not. She calls her grandmother, though, so maybe she does. I don't know. And that tension between them really does work. Judy Greer pulls it off without feeling like a bitch because we want to sympathize with Laurie Strode. We know what she's been through. We have seen it. And you also feel for her daughter because you go, well, maybe she has taken it too far. But that's a great thing that the movie sets up. It lets you know that. Everything else in the movie is a lot of filler. From the beginning until the end scene where they have an epic battle in Laurie Strode's compound, it's so much filler. But watching it on my second run through, I really did enjoy it. And the one scene about in the middle of the movie where you actually see a babysitter and the kid she's babysitting, I think is gold. I think both the actor who played the babysitter and the little boy in the movie, people are saying he steals the film. And he does, because he takes it to a little bit of an extreme with his acting job. But I really liked him. And I really liked him in the second viewing. I wish we would have spent more time with those two characters. But everything to do with the granddaughter, boring. Her friends, boring. I do like that they worked within the tropes of these characters. And they felt alive. And a lot of this movie does feel that way. It feels grounded a lot more than other horror films, especially the ones that we saw in the 90s, which heavily leaned on the meta aspect that was introduced in Scream of everyone knowing what's going on and just wanting to turn itself on its head. That's fun for Scream, but every movie after that tried to be Scream. This movie is just trying to be a continuation of a classic horror movie, and I think it succeeds for the most part. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what I think about it. I enjoyed it. I think that people should watch it. I think it'd be better to watch it with a group of friends than by yourself or in the movie theater where it's made all the money for the last 2 weeks. And we're definitely going to see a third movie. Definitely watch the original and this one back to back. if you're anything like me, you're probably going to enjoy the original movie a lot more than you're going to enjoy this sequel 40 years later. It's so weird to say. But at the same time, if you haven't seen the original, watch it. It's a way better movie than this one. I would say this one is a worthy sequel to the movie, and a lot better than some of the other ones in the franchise. So it will be interesting to see what they do in the future. Does Michael get away in the end? Yeah, he gets away in the end. I'm pretty sure after watching it again, yeah, he'll be back to stalk them another day. So I'm intrigued to see what happens with that. But yeah, hopefully you had thoughts on the movie too, and you want to share those. So you can always reach out to me at quackattack5000@gmail.com. Please check out some of our videos on the Quack Attack 5000 channel on YouTube. You can also check out We Are Error podcast. That's a podcast I do with my friends Javi and Jake. And then check out the Movie Amnesia podcast, where we talk about a movie that we haven't seen in a long time, barely remember, watch the movie, and then we discuss the things that we forgot and how we feel about the movie here at this time. So please, if you have any suggestions or if you want to see anything in the future, check it out. And hopefully I'll do another episode of Meep here in the future to talk about something different going on in my life. I appreciate you listening to me ramble, and I'm going to drink the rest of this and go to bed. So y'all have a happy Halloween. Hope it was safe. Thank you so much again for listening. And there it is. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you have enjoyed it, please do not forget, share with your friends. That is how we grow the network. And if this is your first time listening, head over to your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, iTunes, and give We Are Podcast a like. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, you're going to love the other podcast here on the We Are Podcast Network. We have We Are Bagu, a video game podcast featuring me and Dr. Ethan Eastwood. That's where we talk Atari to Steam and everything in between. Don't forget, Gyros, a Dungeons and Distractions side quest. Me and the boys were sitting down, we're playing some D&D, we're having so much fun. You can go and start that from the beginning of the journey, Season 1, Episode 1. You're going to love it all the way through. And finally, I hate being sober. Personal stories from epic people. I'm going to sit down with some of the most epic people I've ever met in this world, and we're going to talk about their life, we're going to talk about their trials and tribulations, and we're just going to talk about their journey this far. Head on over to our social media. All links can be found in the description. You can find us at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at /WeArePodcast. Also, head over to the Facebook group, We Are Error. We would love to see you in that group. And don't forget, if you've enjoyed the podcast today, share it with your friends. That's the only way we can grow this network. With that said, do not forget, support local comedy in any way that you can. We really do appreciate it. We'll see you next time.